So now we can see the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. First of all, aerobic respiration requires oxygen, whereas anaerobic does not necessarily require oxygen. Aerobic respiration takes place in the mitochondria, whereas anaerobic respiration we know takes place in the cytoplasm. Aerobic respiration produces a lot of ATP or energy molecules, 38 molecules of energy. Whereas aerobic, we have seen, produces only 2 ATP molecules. And the following steps come under aerobic respiration, that is conversion, Krebs cycle or TCA cycle, and electron transport chain. Whereas glycolysis and fermentation, these two processes are parts of anaerobic respiration. Now this next slide is just a flow chart to help you understand the same thing that we have just done before. Okay, food that we consume may be of proteins, carbohydrates or fats. In digestion, the proteins are converted to amino acids, carbohydrates into simple sugar like glucose, and fats into fatty acids. Now we'll notice that whether it is amino acids or glucose, simple sugars or fatty acids, they all get finally converted into pyruvate by the process of here. Simple sugars are broken down into pyruvate by the process of glycolysis. Fatty acids and amino acids also get converted finally into pyruvate. Pyruvate then gets converted into acetyl coenzyme A in the step of conversion. And then we know that it's finally broken down into carbon dioxide and water vapor. And then we can calculate the number of ATP in the end. This is another slide just to make things like for you to remember easily. I've got a little flow chart here. Glucose in the process of glycolysis breaks down into 2 pyruvate molecules. If there's enough of oxygen, it will undergo aerobic cellular respiration to form acetyl coenzyme A, and finally it will break down by the electron by Krebs cycle into carbon dioxide and water vapor. Whereas when there is no oxygen, the 2 pyruvate molecules will undergo a process called as fermentation. And there are 2 types of fermentation: alcoholic fermentation to produce alcohol, or then lactic acid fermentation to produce lactic acid. This takes place in the muscle cell. So you can see a muscle over here cell, and here this takes place in the formation of alcohols in the alcohol industry, bread industry and so forth. Now on page 16 of your textbooks, in a box you have some interesting things which also you must know. For example, if we have extra glucose in our body, suppose when we eat a lot of food, maybe carbohydrates, they are broken down into glucose, and if they are excess, then some of it will be stored in the form of glycogen in the liver. If we have extra proteins in our diet, then the proteins get converted to amino acids, but amino acids cannot be stored in the body. So amino acids have to be thrown out of the body, and therefore they are broken down and they form ammonia, and they are excreted in the form of urine from our body. But sometimes if it's really necessary that we need, because we don't get food, then the amino acids can be converted into glucose, and this process is called as gluconeogenesis. And fatty acids, that comes from simple forms of fats, fatty acids, they can also be stored. They are stored in adipose tissues in the body. We have seen what are adipose tissues last year.